Good morning, everyone. The topic for today's discussion is consumer behavior and marketing communication. The topics to be covered are introduction, marketing communication flow, communications process, barrier to communication, interpersonal communication, persuasive communication, source, message, message appeals, and communication feedbacks. Now, what basically marketing communication means? Marketing communications are the means by which firms attempt to inform, persuade, and remind consumers directly or indirectly about the products and brands they sell. It is the communication, it is a channel through which they pass on the product information to the consumers, right? Now, when we talk about marketing communication flows, basically marketing communication support the marketing plan and help the target audience understand and believe in the advantage of marketers offer over competition. अगर कोई marketer communicate नहीं करता consumers के साथ via any medium, तो उसके प्रोडक्ट की उसके जो ऑफर्स हैं वो मार्केट में देना चाहता है वो कंज्यूमर्स तक नहीं पहुंच पाएंगे. एंड व्हेन दे डू नॉट रीच द ऑडियंस, द टारगेट ऑडियंस, द कॉम्पिटिटर्स are on a competitive edge at that particular point in time. When we talk of marketing communication, there are two type of flows that actually happens. One is the internal flow and the other is the external flow. Internal flow basically refers to that aspect of marketing communication which involves various departments in the company, all the company employees and stakeholders. So it has involved each and every aspect of the company, various departments, various company employees and the stakeholder. So these are the internal flows. So when the company is introducing new product or likewise dropping some existing product prices are revised, or the company enters a new market, right? The company's employees often need to know what the marketing is doing. So that information should also flow internally as well, besides reaching the target audience. Another is the external flow. External flow of marketing communication is directed at the past, current, and potential customer. When we talk about customer, we are talking about outside customers who will give money value to our product, right? At the channel members, at the competing and non-competing companies, and at various other audiences who may influence the company's operations, such as government agencies, private agencies, and expert in the field. Now, when we talk of communication as a process, we hereby means it is a process in which two or more persons, right, consciously or unconsciously strive to influence each other through some use of symbol, right? So in any communication, there are basically four components that we discuss. One is the source, another is the destination, and the third is the medium through which that message would flow, and the fourth one is the message. So here the four components are very well explained. In a communication process, the sender passes on some messages, right? When that message is passed through any medium, it gets decoded, it is then received by a receiver. So it is a process of wherein a sender passes on a message to a receiver, and how that message is encoded and how that message is decoded by the receiver, what responses he takes from it, and what kind of feedback is given to the sender. It's an entire cycle of giving a message to the receiver and then receiving a feedback from the receiver. All right. Now, when we talk about barriers to communication, right, the first very barrier is barrier at the source that are happening at the time of giving the communication. So, improper definition of objective at the source is a barrier to effective communication. From where the message is transmitted, the very first point of message being delivered, right? The source, if there is no clear objective, then the message would not be effective. This failure is most likely to develop an ad message that does not focus on consumer need. Another is message and barriers in encoding. The process of encoding could also be a possible factor for communication failure. Why communication fail? We had first discussed when there is a barrier at the source. Another reason for communication failure is when the encoding process is not proper. Alright, sometimes the creative people are more focused on creating an original ad message than in conveying meaningful product belief. Alright, the marketers, the advertisers, the creative people, they basically concentrate on making an original idea, original and beautiful ad rather than conveying the meaning, right? Then it becomes a barrier. Then there is a point when communication fails. Another is barriers in transmission. When we talk about barriers in transmission, here careful selection of media to reach the target audience is essential. Marketers must match the demographic and other characteristics of the user groups to the profile of media consumer. If a particular ad is to be sent through television, through an audio video media, to have a proper impact, it must be sent through that media only. Otherwise, if we send it through print media, say for example to people who are not able to read and write properly, if we send some messages, if we try to communicate it through that media, then it's a total failure. Another is barriers in decoding. A failure to develop a distinctive product positioning or ad message related to consumer need is likely to create barriers in the decoding process. Consumers selectively ignore messages that fail to stimulate their interest. Besides competitive clutter, continued use of the same ad for a long period is often boring to the audience and may prove to be a barrier and decrease the effectiveness. Now, when we talk of interpersonal communication, occurring at a personal level between two or more people is termed as interpersonal communication. This communication may be face to face between two people or on the telephone or through mail. Alright. Informal communication concerning product or services is more likely between two friends. Such word of mouth communication is likely to be highly persuasive because one friend apparently has nothing to gain from the other friend's future reaction. Alright. Formal interpersonal communication takes place between a salesperson and a potential customer. Now, marketers are often increasingly realizing that non-verbal messages are sometimes more important than verbal messages, particularly in personal selling and advertisement. Now, when we talk about source, there were 4 components of communication flow, and the first one was source. Source here means the person involved in the communicating the advertising message directly or indirectly. It's the medium, it's the starting point where the advertising message starts from, right? A key source, the endorser in an advertisement, can be a celebrity, it can be an announcer, spokesperson, or a common consumer who endorses or demonstrates the product in an advertisement. Source credibility, when we talk about it, is a very crucial element of a source credibility. It refers to the extent to which the audience perceives the source as having relevant knowledge, expertise, or experience, and believe that the source will provide an unbiased and objective information about the product or service. Right? So, the source of information, marketing, communication passing through is a very vital part. If that source is not credible, if the source does not possess the requisite knowledge, requisite experience or expertise, the outcome is bound to have a failure impact. Now, when we talk of the element of credibility, it has two important dimensions. Now, two important dimensions of credibility are: A is expertise. When we show that, and the other one is trustworthiness, right? When we say that expert and trustworthy endorsers are more persuasive than the others considered less knowledgeable or trustworthy. And information coming from an expertise and trustworthy source is more likely to be accepted by the target audiences. A credible source message influences beliefs, opinion, attitudes, and behavior because the audience believes that information from such a source is accurate and becomes integrated in the belief system of individual. An expert in the field is likely to be the best choice when the nature of the product is technical and the consumer needs to be assured about the safety and reliability. And these are the cases where high involvement product decisions are there. Another is trustworthiness. Not only expertise, but the consumer should have trustworthiness, should feel trusted about the endorsers, right? We cannot ask a person of a dubious character to endorse a product simply because of the fact that he does not carry that kind of trustworthiness. He is not tagged with the trustworthiness dimension. Okay. When we talk about source attractiveness, we buy products because of the fact that a source which is very attractive, likewise very clearly said in this example, Garnier's product, right? Attractiveness of a source surrounds similarity, familiarity, and likability. So there are three components to be addressed when you're talking about attractiveness. One is similarity, another is familiarity, and the third one is likability. All right. When we talk of similarity, it is an assumed resemblance between the source and the member of audience, and familiarity means that the knowledge of the source through exposure. This other component is overexposure. Consumers are always, and most of the time, they're very skeptical of endorsers because they know that endorsers are being paid to appear in an ad. So you see a particular personality endorsing various products, they are overexposed. So at times consumer become confused and become skeptical as to whether to understand, to take that advertisement in a good spirit, because after all endorsers are doing those ads simply for money, they are being paid for it. Another is likability. Advertisers most of the time use physical attractive persons in their ad as a passive or decorative model to attract attention. We you have always seen ads of a pimple cream with high profile personalities which who have never encountered, who have never experienced a pimple, promoting a pimple brand product, right? So they use attractive personalities so that the product could be sold out. And when we talk about messages, message is the thought, idea, image, or other information that the advertiser wishes to convey to the target audience. Message could be written, could be oral, it is thought and idea. It can either be one sided or two sided, not necessarily be one sided. Alright, a one sided message mention only benefits or positive attributes of the products or services. Alright, two sided messages can be refutational or non refutational. In a refutational message, the negative information is presented first and then refuted. In a non-refutational messages, right, simply various pros and cons about the products are mentioned, straightforward manners. So refutational appeal, basically an advertising message, are considered a special type of two-sided. Alright, they are basically two-sided messages. Now when we talk about message appeal, it is one of the most critical decisions about creative strategies in advertising involves the choice of an appropriate appeal. So some ads are designed with the intent of appealing to the rational, logical aspect of the consumer decision making process, and others are attempt to stimulate consumers' feeling with the intent of evoking some desired emotional response. Often advertising appeals are classified as rational appeals, emotional appeals, and moral appeals. There are other appeals as well, which are like fear appeal, humor appeal, and sex appeal. When we talk about emotional appeals, basically emotional appeals are put under two categories: positive emotional appeals and negative emotional appeals, right, depending on what kind of emotions are to be triggered. So when we say love, affection, joy, pride, humor, prestige are some examples of positive emotional appeals, and negative appeals are fear, shame, guilt, embarrassment. So these are the emotional appeals that we face. Moral appeal basically attempt to draw attention to basically what is right and what is not right. They're generally used to urge people to support social causes such as environmental concerns, population explosion, donation money to victims of some natural calamity, right? When we talk about fear, fear is a kind of an emotional appeal, right? So it is an emotional response to some actual or perceived threat or danger. It is perceived. Fear is some perceived threat. So advertisers use fear appeal in some situation to evoke a desired emotional response and motivate audience to take steps to remove that threat. We talk of humor appeal. Humor generates feeling of amusement and pleasure. For this reason, it has a potential for the feelings to become associated with the brand and affect consumer attitude towards the brand, and probably it changes its image. Alright, another is sex appeal when we talk about. So there are some products which also caters to this appeal. Now when we talk about communication feedback. So communication feedback is of prime importance. How it is of prime importance? Because it helps in, first in a decoding process. How feedback is given? First the message is decoded. Alright. So feedback helps marketers to evaluate the effectiveness of marketing communication. It is difficult in most cases to determine the effect of advertising on consumer purchase behavior And due to this reason, marketers determine whether the ad result in exposure, attention, comprehension, message acceptance, and retention. Now, there are four types of feedbacks that needs a consideration. All right. In fact, five types that needs to be considered. The first one is measurement of audience exposure. So, exposure to an ad can be measured by taking into account the circulation figures of print media and program ratings for broadcast media. How many times the brochures, the pamphlets have been circulated, the numbers, and TRPs when we say for the broadcast media. These figures are conveniently available for newspapers, magazine, and for different broadcast media advertisement. Another is measurement of audience attention. So now what is that? These figures are measured by recognition of an advertisement by the audience.